The first time I suspected my husband was cheating on me, I was standing in the nursery we had spent months creating for our unborn son, 7 days before my due date. I was folding tiny blue pajamas into a drawer when I heard my husband whisper on the phone downstairs. At first, I smiled. I thought maybe he was calling his mother. Maybe he was arranging one last surprise before the baby arrived. Maybe he was telling someone how excited he was to become a father. But then I heard his voice, a voice I had never heard before, a voice filled with fear. "She can't know yet," he said quietly. I froze. My hand stopped moving. The tiny baby shirt I was holding slipped onto the floor. There was something about those 4 words that changed the air around me. She can't know yet. Not, I don't know how to tell her. Not, I'm worried about her. Not, I need more time. He said it like someone hiding a secret. And the worst part? I already knew exactly who she was. Me. My name is Emily Carter. I was 32 years old, married to the man I had loved since college, and 1 week away from becoming a mother for the first time. If someone had told me that my perfect little family was about to fall apart, I would have laughed. Because from the outside, my life looked like something people dreamed about. My husband Daniel and I had been together for 8 years. We met during our final year of university. I was the girl who always arrived late to lectures carrying coffee and 3 notebooks, because I was convinced I needed to write everything down. Daniel was the quiet guy in the back row, who somehow understood every subject without studying half as much as the rest of us. I hated him at first. I thought he was arrogant. Then one day, I dropped an entire stack of papers in the hallway. Everyone walked past me, except Daniel. He stopped. He picked everything up, and he said, "You know, most people would probably organize their notes before carrying them through a crowded hallway." I looked at him and said, "Most people don't have your annoying amount of confidence." He smiled. And somehow, that was the beginning. Years later, I still remembered that smile. Because Daniel had one of those smiles that made people feel safe. He wasn't the kind of man who bought expensive gifts or planned dramatic surprises. He showed love differently. He fixed the leaking kitchen sink before I even noticed it. He remembered how I liked my coffee. He warmed up my car on cold mornings. When I was sick, he would sit beside me for hours, even if I told him I was fine. Especially when I told him I was fine. That was Daniel. He noticed the things I tried to hide. Or at least, I thought he did. The pregnancy had been a long journey. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of hoping. 7 years of hearing doctors say things like, "Try not to stress. Give it time." Sometimes these things happen naturally. People always say, waiting makes you appreciate something more. Maybe that's true. Because when I finally saw those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat on the bathroom floor staring at it. I was terrified to believe it. When I told Daniel, he didn't speak for almost 10 seconds. He just looked at me. Then he covered his face with both hands. I thought something was wrong. Then I saw his shoulders shaking. He was crying. "I'm going to be a dad?" he whispered. I nodded. He walked toward me slowly, like I was something fragile. Then he placed his hand on my stomach, even though there was nothing to feel yet. "I promise," he said. "I promise I'll be the father I never had." At the time, those words touched me. Now they confused me. Because I started wondering what exactly he meant. Daniel never talked much about his childhood. I knew his father left when he was young. I knew his mother raised him alone. But whenever I asked questions, he changed the subject. Not angrily, just quickly, like he was closing a door. That was one of his weaknesses. Daniel wanted to be everyone's protector. But he never understood that sometimes people don't need protection. They need honesty. And I had my own weakness too. I needed control. I hated uncertainty. I wanted plans, schedules, answers. During pregnancy, that part of me became stronger. I researched everything. The safest baby bottles, the best sleeping positions, the perfect hospital bag. Daniel teased me about it. You know our baby is going to come out and immediately ask for a spreadsheet. I laughed. Maybe he should. Someone has to keep this family organized. He smiled. But sometimes I noticed something strange. Whenever I talked about the future, Daniel looked worried. Not excited. Worried. At first I blamed myself. Maybe he was nervous. Maybe becoming a father scared him. That was normal. Right? Except nervous people usually ask questions. They usually talk. Daniel became quieter. The first real warning sign happened 3 weeks before my due date. Daniel came home late. Very late. Almost midnight. I was sitting on the couch watching television with a blanket over my legs. The moment he opened the door, I knew something was wrong. Not because he looked guilty, because he looked exhausted. Like he had been fighting a battle nobody knew about. Hey, he said softly. Hey, I replied. He walked over and kissed my forehead. Normally, that would have made everything better. But that night, it didn't. Because I smelled a perfume. Not mine. I noticed immediately. I hated myself for noticing. I hated that my brain went there. Where were you? I asked. He took off his jacket. At work. I waited. Usually he would explain. Usually he would tell me about his day. This time? Nothing. Daniel. He looked at me. Yeah? Is everything okay? For a second, I saw something in his eyes. Fear. Then it disappeared. Of course. That answer bothered me more than anything else. Because when someone says, of course, too quickly, sometimes they are trying to convince you, and sometimes they are trying to convince themselves. After that night, small things started adding up. His phone was always face down. He started taking calls outside. He stopped leaving his phone charging on the nightstand. One evening, while we were eating dinner, he received a message. I wasn't trying to look. I promise I wasn't. But the phone was sitting right beside his plate. The screen lit up, and I saw the first line. She deserves to know the truth before the baby arrives. My heart stopped. I looked at Daniel. He saw my expression. Immediately, he grabbed the phone. Too quickly. What was that? I asked. Nothing. Nothing. That word. The one word that can destroy trust faster than any confession. I smiled because I didn't want to fight. But inside something cracked. Who was it? Just someone from work. I looked at him. Daniel was many things. But a bad liar? He was never a bad liar. And that scared me. Because if he was lying now, it meant he had practiced. That night, I barely slept. I watched him lying beside me. The man whose hand I had held through the hardest moments of my life. The man who promised he would always protect me. The man who was about to become the father of my child. And for the first time in 8 years, I wondered if I actually knew him. At 3:17 in the morning, Daniel quietly got out of bed. I pretended to sleep. I heard him walk downstairs. Then I heard his voice. Soft. Broken. Almost like he was begging someone. And then he said the sentence that changed everything. Please, just wait until after she gives birth. I opened my eyes. My heart was racing. Because now I knew one thing. Whatever Daniel was hiding, he wasn't planning to tell me. Not before my son was born. And that meant I had only 7 days to find out the truth. before my entire life changed forever. I spent the next morning pretending nothing had happened. That was the strangest part. Not the fear, not the suspicion, the pretending. I made coffee. I packed Daniel's lunch. I asked him if he wanted eggs or toast. I smiled when he walked into the kitchen. And all the while, one sentence kept repeating in my head. Please, just wait until after she gives birth. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. I needed there to be an explanation. Because the alternative was too painful. The man who had held my hand during every doctor's appointment. The man who painted our baby's room at 2 a.m. because I didn't like the first shade of blue. The man who cried when we heard our son's heartbeat for the first time. That man couldn't be hiding something terrible from me. Could he? I watched Daniel across the kitchen table. He was scrolling through his phone while drinking coffee. A normal morning. A normal husband. Except nothing felt normal anymore. Did you sleep okay? I asked. He looked up. For half a second, panic flashed across his face. Then he smiled. Yeah? You? I looked at him. At the man I loved. At the man I suddenly felt like I was investigating. Not really. His expression softened. Are you uncomfortable? Do we need to call the doctor? And there it was. The old Daniel. The caring one. The one who noticed everything. My heart almost relaxed. Almost. But then his phone vibrated. A message appeared on the screen. He turned it over immediately. Too quickly. And this time, I saw it. A name. Rachel. I had never heard that name before. And somehow, I knew I would remember it forever. I spent the entire day trying to convince myself I was being irrational. Pregnant women worry. That's what everyone says. Your hormones change. Your emotions become stronger. You overthink. Maybe I was creating a story that didn't exist. Maybe Rachel was just someone from work. Maybe the message was about something completely innocent. But then I remembered something. Daniel never hid work messages from me. Never. He was the type of person who left his laptop open on the couch. He didn't have secret passwords. He didn't disappear for hours. So why now? Why 7 days before our baby was born? That question followed me everywhere. While I folded baby clothes. While I cleaned the kitchen. While I stood in the nursery and stared at the empty crib. The crib Daniel built himself. The same crib where he once stood for 20 minutes, trying to understand the instructions. He looked at the manual, then at the crib, then back at the manual. Finally, he sighed. I think this thing was designed by someone who hates fathers. I laughed so hard that night I cried. Those memories were the worst part. Because when someone hurts you, your mind doesn't only show you the bad moments. It shows you every beautiful moment too. And that makes the pain harder. That afternoon, I made a decision. I wasn't going to accuse him. Not yet. I needed proof. I hated that I even thought that word. Proof. Like I was preparing for a courtroom instead of trying to understand my marriage. But something inside me had changed. A small part of me no longer trusted my own husband, and that scared me more than anything. When Daniel came home, I watched him carefully. He was quieter than usual. He kissed my forehead. He asked about the baby. He rubbed my stomach and smiled. 7 more days, he whispered. I looked at him. Are you excited? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. More than anything, I wanted to ask, then why do you look terrified? Instead, I asked, who is Rachel? The room went silent. Not for long. Maybe 2 seconds. But 2 seconds is enough, because sometimes silence is an answer. Daniel stopped moving. His hand froze on my stomach. What? I forced myself to stay calm. Rachel, your message this morning." His face changed. Not guilt. Something else. Fear. "Emily." That was all he said. Just my name. But the way he said it made my stomach tighten. "What's going on?" He looked away, and that hurt more than if he had yelled. Because Daniel always looked at me, even during arguments, even when he was angry. But now, he couldn't look at me. "I can explain." I laughed quietly. Not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. People only say that when there's something to explain. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Finally, he said, "It's complicated." 3 words. The most dangerous 3 words in any relationship. Because complicated usually means the truth is something someone doesn't want to say. That night, Daniel went to sleep early. Or at least he pretended to. I lay beside him in the dark, staring at the ceiling. My son was moving inside me. Little kicks, little reminders that I wasn't alone. I placed my hand over my stomach. "I'm sorry," I whispered. I didn't even know who I was apologizing to. My baby? Myself? The woman I used to be before doubt entered my home? Around midnight, Daniel's phone lit up. He was asleep. Or pretending. I watched the screen glow in the darkness. One new message. From Rachel. My heart started beating faster. I knew I shouldn't. I knew this was wrong. But I picked up his phone. My fingers were shaking. I unlocked it. And the first message I saw made my entire body go cold. "Rachel, you promised you would tell her before the baby comes." I scrolled. The next message was worse. "Rachel, you can't keep protecting her from the truth forever." My hands went numb. Protecting me? From what? I kept reading. Another message. "Daniel, she just needs to get through the birth safely." Then, "Rachel." And after that, a pause. Then Daniel's reply. "Daniel, after that, I'll tell her everything." Everything. That word destroyed me. Because people don't hide everything when it's something small. They hide everything when the truth changes how you see them. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. Then, I got out of bed. Quietly. I walked to the bathroom and closed the door. Only then did I allow myself to break. I covered my mouth so Daniel wouldn't hear me cry. Because somehow, even in that moment, I was still protecting him. That was the part that hurt the most. I was hurt. I was scared. I felt betrayed. And I was still worried about his feelings. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was swollen. My eyes were red. A woman about to become a mother. A woman who had spent years building a life with someone. And suddenly, I didn't know if that life was real. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to find Rachel. I needed answers. Not from Daniel. Not from someone who had already decided what I was allowed to know. From the person who knew the truth. Finding Rachel was easier than I expected. And that scared me. Because it meant Daniel had never really tried to hide her. He had only tried to hide the reason. I searched through old emails, social media, anything I could find. Then I saw a photo. A photo from 5 years ago. Daniel standing beside a woman. The same woman from the messages. Rachel. But she wasn't smiling. She looked exhausted. And standing beside her was a little girl. A child about 4 years old. I stared at the screen. Because there was something familiar about that picture. Something I couldn't understand. Then I noticed the caption. Only 5 words. The day everything changed. My heart started racing. Because underneath the photo was a date. A date from before Daniel and I got married. A date Daniel had never mentioned. And suddenly, I wasn't just wondering if my husband had cheated. I was wondering what kind of life he had before me. And what secret from his past was powerful enough to follow him into our marriage? I closed my laptop, but the question stayed. Who was Rachel? And why did my husband believe the truth could destroy me? I didn't confront Daniel that morning. That surprised me. A few weeks earlier, I would have said I could never live with a secret. I would have said if my husband lied to me, I would leave immediately. But life is different when you're standing in your kitchen 7 days before giving birth to your first child. Because suddenly, every decision has consequences. It wasn't just about me anymore. There was a tiny person inside me who depended on me to stay calm, to think clearly, to make the right choice, even when my heart was breaking. So instead of screaming, instead of throwing his phone across the room, I did something I never thought I would do. I investigated my own husband, and every answer I found created a bigger question. The first thing I did was search for Rachel, not like a jealous wife looking for proof of an affair, like someone trying to understand why a stranger had become such a huge part of my marriage. I found her social media profile. Her account was private, but there were a few public photos. Most of them were years old. Rachel with her daughter. Rachel at work. Rachel smiling. And then I saw something that made my hands go cold. A photo of Rachel and Daniel. Not a romantic photo. They weren't holding each other. They weren't looking at each other like couples do. They were standing several feet apart. But Daniel looked different. Younger. Sad. Like he was carrying something heavy. The caption said, "Some people enter your life because they owe you nothing, and still give you everything." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Because if Rachel was his affair partner, why did she write about him like that? Why did she sound grateful? Not heartbroken. Not angry. Grateful. That wasn't the story I expected. And suddenly, the version of events I had created in my head started falling apart. That afternoon, I decided to follow Daniel. I felt ashamed admitting it. This wasn't who I was. I wasn't the kind of person who checked locations or followed people. But when trust disappears, people sometimes become versions of themselves they don't recognize. Daniel told me he had a meeting, a normal sentence, a normal husband. Except I knew he was lying. I waited 10 minutes after he left. Then I grabbed my keys. I followed him. My heart was beating so hard that I could hear it. I expected him to go somewhere romantic, a hotel, a restaurant, somewhere I could catch him, somewhere I could finally say, I knew it. But he didn't. He drove to a hospital. I parked across the street and watched him walk inside. My first thought was, maybe he's sick, maybe something happened. Then I saw Rachel. She was waiting near the entrance. Daniel walked toward her. They spoke quietly. She handed him an envelope. He looked at it. Then he hugged her. Not a romantic hug, a painful one. The kind people give when they're saying goodbye. I felt confused. If this was an affair, why did it look like grief? I waited until Rachel left. Then I followed Daniel inside. I found him sitting alone in the hospital hallway. The strongest man I knew looked completely broken. He was holding the envelope. I walked toward him. Daniel. His head snapped up. The color disappeared from his face. Emily? I stood there, 7 months pregnant, exhausted, heartbroken. Tell me the truth. He looked down. For a moment, I thought he would lie again, but he didn't. Maybe he finally realized there was nowhere left to hide. Okay. One word, but it sounded like surrender. He looked at the floor. Rachel isn't my affair. I said nothing, because I wanted him to continue. She's someone from my past. My stomach tightened. What kind of past? Daniel took a deep breath. And then he said something I never expected. A past I was ashamed of. 8 years earlier, before we met, Daniel had been driving home late one night. He was 24, young, reckless, confident in the way people are when they think nothing bad can happen to them. It was raining. The roads were dangerous. And he was tired. A car accident happened. Daniel survived. But another person's life changed forever. Rachel's daughter, Lily, had been standing near the road when it happened. Daniel swerved to avoid hitting her. He crashed into a barrier. He broke his leg. He spent weeks in recovery. But Lily was safe. That was the part nobody knew. The accident had never been about someone dying. It was about someone almost dying. And Daniel had carried that fear with him ever since. I thought if I hadn't been there, she would have been hit by another car, he said. But if I hadn't reacted, maybe she would have been hurt because of me. I looked at him. So why hide this? His eyes filled with tears. Because I was afraid you would see me differently. I shook my head. You saved a child. He looked away. You don't understand. No, I said quietly. I don't. Because you never let me. And that was the truth. The accident wasn't the thing that damaged our marriage. The secret was. Then Daniel showed me the envelope. Inside were medical documents. My name was on them. I frowned. What is this? He hesitated, and that hesitation scared me. Emily, tell me. He looked at me. During your last appointment, the doctors found something. My heart dropped. What? There's a complication. Suddenly everything made sense. The fear, the phone calls, the messages, the secrecy. But not completely. What does Rachel have to do with this? Daniel took the papers from my hand. Before you got pregnant, Rachel became a medical researcher. She works with the hospital. When the doctors realized there was a possible problem, they asked for additional support. I looked at him. And you went to her? He nodded. I knew she would help. Why didn't you tell me? His eyes filled with regret. Because every doctor's appointment, every conversation, every day, I watched you become happier. He swallowed. You waited 7 years for this baby. I couldn't be the person who took away your happiness. I felt tears running down my face. You didn't protect me, Daniel. He looked at me. You isolated me. Those words hurt. Because they were true. The hardest conversation wasn't about Rachel. It wasn't about the accident. It was about us. About how two people who loved each other could still hurt each other. Daniel thought love meant carrying pain alone. I thought love meant never hiding anything. Both of us were wrong. That night, we sat in our living room. The nursery was right across the hallway. Our son was coming in a few days. And for the first time in weeks, we talked. Really talked. Daniel admitted he had a weakness. He wanted to be the hero. The person who fixed everything. Even when nobody asked him to. And I admitted mine. I wanted control so badly that sometimes I forgot people weren't problems to solve. They were people to understand. Our son was born 5 days later. Daniel cried the moment he heard him. Not quietly, not trying to hide it. He held our baby and whispered, I'm going to tell you the truth. Always. I watched him, and I believed him. Not because promises are enough. They aren't. I believed him because after everything fell apart, he stayed. He answered every question. He accepted every painful conversation. He stopped trying to protect me from reality. And slowly, we rebuilt. Months later, I asked Daniel something. Were you ever afraid I would leave? He smiled sadly. Every day. Then why didn't you tell me? He looked at our son playing on the floor. Because I thought losing you would hurt more than losing myself. I never forgot that. Because sometimes people don't destroy relationships because they don't love enough. Sometimes they destroy them because they love someone so much that they become afraid. But fear is not the same as love. Love requires courage. The courage to be seen. The courage to be honest. The courage to let someone choose you after knowing the truth. I still remember the night I thought I caught my husband cheating. The night I believed my entire marriage was a lie. But the truth was something I never expected. My husband wasn't hiding another woman. He was hiding the parts of himself he thought made him unworthy of love. And maybe that was the biggest lesson. The secrets we hide to protect people can sometimes hurt them more than the truth ever would. Because love isn't built on perfection. It's built on honesty. Even when honesty is terrifying. And now, whenever I look at our son sleeping peacefully, I remember those 7 days before his birth. The fear, the questions, the pain, and the moment I realized the person standing closest to me wasn't my enemy. He was just someone who had forgotten that he didn't have to carry everything alone. If you were in Emily's place, would you forgive Daniel? Was he protecting his family? Or did he cross a line by keeping such a huge secret? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you would have done.